different parts of, which goes over there, there's one over here, different parts of the Gemara, different parts of the Torah which are read or and not translated or not read at all. Interestingly, one of them is actually the Haftarah of Parshas Kedoshim, which we don't usually read. I think this year we're going to read it because Parshas Kedoshim is, it's not Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Holding here in the Gemara, Daf Mesechta Megillah, Daf Chaf Hey Amud Beis. Hoidas Yerushalayim. So if you see on the screen, you've had the Gemara in front of you. Hoidas Yerushalayim. This is about this is the second wide line on the page. Daf Chaf Hey Amud Beis. This is a Haftarah in Yecheskel. It's a Teichachah. It's a admonishment of the Jewish people, saying all the sins of Yerushalayim. Hashem tells Yecheskel, let the people of Yerushalayim know of its sins. Now, Yecheskel was actually in Bavel. His prophecy took place not when he was in the Holy Land, but Hashem lists off several of the sins that the people of Yerushalayim did and why they deserved their punishment of going into exile. The Brisa, which we quoted, said that this particular Haftarah, which speaks about the sins of Yerushalayim, is read and it's translated. The Gemara asks, Pshita, obviously, why would I think different? The Gemara answers, La fukim mid Rabbi Eliezer, to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. And the Gemara will give an anecdote, which happened. Very Chassidish anecdote. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Rabbi Maisa ba'adam echad, shehaya korei l'mayla me Rabbi Eliezer. There's a story that there was one time a person who was reading the Haftarah, Masum Parshas Kedoshim, and above Rabbi Eliezer. What does it mean above? Just like today, the bima where the Balkar reads the Torah is above, it's elevated above the people. Most shows that it's actually on a platform above the actual people. And Rabbi Eliezer was on the bottom, so he was listening to the person reading the Haftarah. And he read this Haftarah of Ben Adam, son of man, tell the people of Yerushalayim all of their sins that they have done. Amar Loi, he answered back to him. Rabbi Eliezer got very upset. And he says, how could he speak negatively about the Jewish people? Before you speak negative about the sins of Jerusalem, go look at your mother's sins. Look at what your mother has done, and go check your yichus, so check your lineage to see if everything in your lineage has been done in a legitimate Torah-approved manner. And they went and they searched after him, and they did some investigations. And they found him to have a stain of illegitimacy. As it says that those who are illegitimate, those who don't have proper yichus, they have a trait of chutzpah. So he was illegitimate. He was a mamzer. He's a partial mamzer at least. So therefore, the Brisa tells us that even though you might think the halacha should be like Rabbi Eliezer, thank you, Eli, which Rabbi Eliezer says that you should not read.
Rabbi, I don't know if you can hear me, but there's no sound
at all. No sound at all.
I've got it here.
Could you hear the sound? I can hear you, Mr. Minsky. Can anyone else hear me?
I hear sound.
Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, it seems to me that to be working just from everything else. Hey, shliach. When I was in yeshiva in Toronto, a story happened about a year or two before I came. There was an elder chassid in the yeshiva. His name was Mendel Aranov. And there was a certain student in yeshiva, came from a Russian family, he was about tshuva. And he always had trouble following the rules of yeshiva. He was learning Chassidus during the time of Gemara, learning Gemara during the time of Chassidus. And, sometimes mouthing off, saying things in a chutzpahdik way. And it was by a Fabringen, this elder chassid, Mendel Aranov, and he saw this boy and he says, you should check his lineage, check his yichus. And they checked and they found out he wasn't really Jewish. His mother's father was Jewish, but his mother's mother was not Jewish. So, yeah, someone who's overly chutzpahdik, it said they have to check, perhaps they have a chashash, they have a possibility that they don't have a proper yichus. There's a story of Rabbi Menachem Gerlitzky. He's in Crown Heights. He runs Kollel Eretz Hatzvi of Crown Heights. And he makes many, many programs in different Torah classes, Shiurim, in many different senior living places, old age homes. And one time we went to a certain place, and there was one old man over there, and he said, and he was a Jewish man, and he said, oh, you're Lubavitch. I can't handle you Lubavitch people. He says, because, he had a not good experience once with Lubavitch Rebbe. He says, okay, let me hear about it. And he says, one time, he had a son. He says, son's Jewish, and his son was going out with a non-Jew, the shiksa. And so he was desperate, didn't know what to do with himself. He went to the Rebbe, and he asked the Rebbe for a bracha, and the Rebbe gave him a bracha, and the Rebbe says, everything will be okay, not to worry. And his son married the shiksa, his son married the non-Jew. He says, oh, Lubavitch, you put so much power in the brachas of the Rebbe, and look, my son married a non-Jew. So Menachem Gerlitzky obviously understands that if the Rebbe said so, there's more to the story. So he says, let me hear some more, tell me about your wife, tell me about... And the person's going on, once he's angry, he says, not just the Lubavitch Rebbe, all rabbis are like that. None of the rabbis would accept my wife's conversion. Oh, your wife converted. Yeah, she converted, but none of the rabbis would accept her conversion and would never consider her Jewish. And says, oh, okay. So he says, I have news to tell you. You were married to a non-Jew, and your son was not Jewish, and the Rebbe said everything will be fine. And everything was fine because your son was not Jewish, and he married someone else who was not Jewish. And after he told them, this person thought for a minute. He says, you know what? Maybe what you're saying has some truth to it, because whenever my wife will get drunk, she will start cursing me out. You dirty Jew, or you this Jew. So maybe there is some truth to what you're saying. And so it's a very, important thing, a serious thing to check a person's yichus. And the Rebbe, of course, spoke many, many times, and never to speak negatively about another Jew. How could somebody, God forbid, say the reason for the Holocaust was because of those who sinned? How could somebody, God forbid, say that we could live without every part of Eretz Yisrael? How could he say about other Jews that they're of Avodah Zarah, that they serve idols? And of course, we have many, many, many examples of that. What's interesting is halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer, and this particular kriya of Yecheskel is haftarah that we read, but not too often. It's on Parshas Kedoshim, when Acharei Mesechta Kedoshim are usually together. They're only separate generally in a leap year. And even when they're separate, a lot of times, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos Machar Chodesh of Chodesh Iyar. And so many times that you don't actually end up reading this haftarah. And there's a debate among poskim, which haftarah should you read? Haftarah of Acharei Mos, haftarah of Kedoshim. The Ramah writes, and the Mishnah Berurah writes that you should do the second haftarah, the haftarah of Kedoshim, when they're together. You should rather skip this haftarah. There are different minhagim of the different places, and generally you should do the other haftarah, but sometimes if you're stuck, you could do this haftarah. For example, in a place where you don't have an actual sefer neviim, a sefer of haftarahs, and they use an actual navi on a scroll, on a parchment. So to go from Yecheskel to Yeshaya, you have to roll a lot. Then you do this Haftarah. So although the halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer, as our Gemara says, but still it's something they should point out and something you should pay attention to. That we only when it's necessary do we actually read this Haftarah. Continues the Gemara. These sections are read but not translated. And the Gemara and the quoted a Brisa, Tosefta, which gave us a whole list of parts of a Torah which are read and not translated. And the first one was Maaseh Reuven, the story of Reuven. Nikra v'lo mitargim. It is read and is not translated. What's the story of Reuven? It's all of half a pasuk over here on the screen. Pasuk Chav Beis. It says, "Vahi b'shkoin Yisrael b'Eretz Hahi." When it came to pass that the Israel, it means Yaakov, lived in that land with his sons. Vayelech Reuven, and Reuven. This is right after Rachel died. And Reuven went, and it says, "Vayishkav es bila pilegesh aviv." You see, there's two trup on the words because either it's the end of a pasuk or it's middle of a pasuk. It says he went and he lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Vayishma Yisrael, and Yaakov heard about it. Vayivnei Yaakov shnei maser, and the sons of Yaakov were 12. So you don't translate this one pasuk, this one verse. I brought up here on the screen. Here is actually you could see a little bit different. Here is this pasuk, this verse in the Torah, the way it's written. It says, "Vahi b'shkoin Yisrael b'aretz hahi, vayelech Reuven mishkav es bila pilegesh aviv." The last words on the column, correct? Next page. Vayishma Yisrael, and Yaakov heard. Psucha. There's a new, in middle of the pasuk, there's a break for a new paragraph. You don't have so many of those. A psik b'emtza pasuk, a new paragraph in the middle of a verse. There's only a few of them in the Torah. Here's one of them in this particular pasuk. And then it says, "Vayivnei Yaakov shnei maser," the sons of Yaakov were 12. And then it lists off all the sons of Yaakov.
But it's actually a separate pasuk to see by you and the Yaakov.
No, so it's actually not a separate pasuk.
No.
If you look over here, you see, it's all part of pasuk Chav Beis.
Yeah, you're right. It's not a separate pasuk.
All part of pasuk Chav Beis.
Yeah.
And it says, "Vayivnei Yaakov shnei maser." And well, let me just bring up Rashi. Right, Rashi on the page. Show Rashi. Rashi says, why is that part of the same verse, part of the same pasuk, to tell you that all of them are the same. All the sons of Yaakov were tzaddikim, and Reuven didn't actually lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Rather, he moved Yaakov's bed from Bilhah's tent to his mother Leah's tent, and he said to himself, Bilhah is only a secondary. She's a concubine to Yaakov. My mother, Leah, is Yaakov's. Rachel and Leah were the two main wives. After Yaakov moved his bed from Rachel's tent, it should move into my mother's tent, to Leah's tent. Now, what it means his bed, it means his main bed. Of course, they were, Yaakov had his bed, but, with all of his, set wives at separate times. But he demanded his mother's honor. And because of that, it says that Yaakov, it considers it that Reuven actually laid with his mother. Now, you know that. Yeah.
Do you know any midrashim that records Yaakov's response, or whether Yaakov, moved the bed back to Bilhah? Is it Bilhah?
There was one medrash which I mentioned when looking this up previously, was that what does it mean that Reuven laid there? It says
He laid with his mother. He laid
Yeah, I remember that one.
Right.
his father's concubine.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. He laid with his father's concubine, right? It says that he made sure to be in the room so Yaakov couldn't have relations, and therefore, but Yaakov's sons were 12. He couldn't have any more children afterwards.
Yeah.
But that's a pirush. I don't remember who it came from. Who exactly?
Maybe after moving the bed, he was tired, so he laid down in the
But
bed.
he gave me some good homework to do in Hashem.
He was over 130 years old.
What?
He was over 130 years old.
Who, Yaakov? Yeah. Right, but also Yaakov saying he only started having children at the age of 93, right? Saying the sons of Yaakov were barely 12 years old, 12, 13, 14. They were all, they didn't even, the story was Shem didn't happen, and Shimon and Levi turned 13, right? Shimon turned 13 on that day. Fine. Continues the Gemara, is an anecdote about this idea. Umayse be Rebbe Chanina ben Gamliel is a story about Rebbe Chanina ben Gamliel. Halach le-Kabul. He went to Kabul. Which Kabul? This is where I had a little fun in my preps. Which Kabul? This Kabul over here. That's a Kabul most people know about.
Yeah.
Right? This is a street scene in Kabul. Not this Kabul. These are all pictures taken from Kabul. Not with these guys. This is a Kabul police force training how to, hold weapons without weapons. Kabul is a city in Eretz Yisrael. You see in Yeshua, this is chapter 20, near the end of Yeshua, chapter 19. Yeshua is dividing the land between all the Shvatim, all the tribes, and in the area of I think this is Dan. No, this is Asher, and Asher went El Kabul, Mismo, and went to Kabul. Kabul's a city. Where is it? No, Kabul's a city. Well, that too, but the Kabul here in the Gemara is a city here in Eretz Yisrael. You see where it is? It's near Haifa, near Carmiel, near Naria, Aker, Tzvas.
Akko is Zachary, yeah.
So this is a city called Kabul. It's an ancient city. You see it's here mentioned in the Gemara. There's a Mesechta over here, which says a story about the son Hillel and Yehuda, the sons of Rebbe Gamliel, went to Kabul, and the people over there honored them by pouring wine in with pipes and oil. So over there it's saying how it's not a form of avodah zarah. It's not from Darkei Amodi. There was a big Tana there named Zakai. Josephus. He had his headquarters there in the city of Kabul, and he was fighting against the Romans. Romans totally destroyed the city. He ran away. He set up a new center over there in the city of Kabul, and it was destroyed 1 year before the Churban, or 2 years before the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Kabul was destroyed. He was captured, and that's when he turned over to the Romans and became a historian to say what happened. So right now, currently, Kabul is in Eretz Yisrael. It's the land of Israel. It's populated only by Arabs. About 10,000 Arabs lived in the city. During the War of Independence, there were about, I think, 180 Arabs. I think I put it on the screen. This is what Kabul looks like today. About 10,000 Arabs. You see the mosques over here in the city.
I mean, actually, it's in the Galilee, and the majority population of the Galilee is actually Arab.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
What do they call it? They call it.
And they found this city. Ancient Kabul is right next to this area of Kabul.
You call it Kabul now?
Yeah, it's still called Kabul till today. Kabul, Israel. What Kabul means, one says it means Kabbalah. I remember one says it means those who don't please the people we don't like. Right, so this is the city of Kabul, right over there, near Carmiel, Naria, up in northern Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that's the city of Kabul. Could X out all of these.
Yeah.
And so the Rebbe Gamliel, Rebbe Chanina, son of Gamliel, before we mentioned Yehuda and the other and Hillel, the sons of Nasi Gamliel, they went to Kabul, and in Kabul, and the Chazan, the Shamash of the Shul, was reading Vayihi b'shkoin Yisrael, and it came to pass when this pasuk, when Yaakov lived in the land, and he told the translator, "Hafsik al tatagim, stop, don't translate over here. Ela achrain, only translate the last words of the pasuk." So back to over here, it says, don't translate the first half of the verse from here till Vishma Yisrael. And it came to pass when Israel was in the land, Reuven went lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it, and the sons of Yaakov were 12. Only start translating from the words, and the sons of Yaakov were 12. Because many people who don't know any better are going to hear the translation of the words. And if you just read the translation, and you don't read Rashi, and you don't read the Midrashim on this, you can have a very misinterpreted understanding of this entire pasuk, this entire verse. So only translate Vayu v'nei Yaakov shnei maser, and the sons of Yaakov were 12. V'shibchuhu chachamim, and the chachamim praised him. Rashi says over here, we brought here, that since the words Vayu v'nei Yaakov shnei maser starts a new paragraph in the Torah, so therefore, if you start translating from there, it doesn't seem anything is off. It makes total sense, and that's fine. And the Chachamim agreed with Rabbi Hanina. Nowadays, this is not really an issue because we don't translate the Torah simultaneously, pasuk by pasuk, verse by verse, at any rate when we learn. Now,
Nowadays, most people understand Lashon Kodesh, they don't understand.
correct, yeah. Not so many people understand Aramaic nowadays.
Also, in the World War of 48, the Israeli soldiers over the radio, they didn't have any kind of interpretation.
Interesting.
They used to talk in Targum to the Arabs who shouldn't understand.
Interesting. And I guess they knew Targum. The Israeli soldiers knew Targum because they learned in Cheder. Very interesting. The Sfas Emes first got a Rebbe, second got a Rebbe. Chidush Harim was the first one. Sfas Emes asked a question that seemingly, why didn't we say this in the Mishnah? How come we only saying this over here? Our Mishnah also said that the story of Reuven Nikra v'Lam Targim. So he answers that over here we want to bring a story. The story, and once you have a Maisa Rav, it's a much stronger proof than just saying the halacha. Continuing the Gemara. Maisa Egel Hasheni Nikra v'Lam Targim. The Egel, right? The Parashos Kisisa chap, we say these in the middle of Sheni, beginning of Parak Lamed Beis, chapter 32, says what happens when Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain, the Jewish people are waiting for him, and you have the sin of the golden calf, all the way through verse 30. Aaron saw what happened, he built a Mizbeach, says Chag Lashem Machar, a golden calf came out, and you have everything that, through verse, 1 through 20. And Moshe Rabbeinu came down the mountain and he got angry. He broke the luchos, he broke the tablets, he crushed the golden calf, made it into dust, put it in water, and made the Jewish people to drink it. And those who served the golden calf died. Moshe told Aaron, verses 21 through 24, or 25 rather. This is called Parshas Egel Hasheni, the second part of the Egel, of the sin of the golden calf. And Moshe tells Aaron, what have you done? And Aaron says, please don't get angry. You know the people are disposed towards evil. And the main words that Aaron said, which we don't want to translate, is Aaron telling Moshe what happened. The people came to me, he says, make us a god or a judge. And I told them, who has gold? Give it to me. They took off their gold, they gave it to me. I threw it into the fire. He didn't say, I made it. He says, Vayetze ha'egel hazeh. And this calf came out. Now, how did it come out? We know the story that Micha went and he threw the shard into the fire, which says, Alei shar, make an ox, and an ox came out. And with magic, they made it come alive and start talking. The actual meaning of the words could be misunderstood. Vayetze egel hazeh, and this calf came out, could sound like it had its own individual power, and it was able to come out by itself. Vayetze egel hazeh. So we don't read this entire portion because it's possible to sound like that it had its own power. The beginning, it talks about the Jewish people sinned. Here, it pins it more on Aharon. It says the Gemara, what is considered to be the second narrative of the golden calf? And the Gemara answers, mean Vayomer Moshe ad Vayam Moshe. As we said from verses 21, Moshe said to Aaron, what did they do? Through verse 25, and Moshe saw what happened.
It's interesting. It seems like Aaron was actually trying to hold them off from doing something. They said they could actually got him go, so they didn't get the Avera. Aaron says tomorrow will be Chaim Hashem, but then it went haywire because they actually worshipped the calf.
Correct.
Let's see.
So when Aaron is retelling the story to Moshe, that part we don't translate, because people could think that the golden calf, came out by itself, and it's not honorable for Aaron to say such a thing. That Aaron could say that the golden calf came out by itself. And in addition, if it's something, Aaron does not need a kapara, an atonement, because Aaron did not do anything wrong. So the other answers that we gave, that we could speak about other people because it's an atonement, a kapara for them, when you mention what they did, does not apply to Aaron. The Gemara brings a brisa, which from there we see how you should be very careful what you say, how people should not misinterpret what you say. Tanya Rebbe Shimon Elazar says, a person should be very careful in the response, how they respond to people. From the answer based on Moshe's response, Aaron's response to Moshe Rabbeinu, later on, in later generations, people wanted to throw off the yoke of Hashem, renounce their belief based on what Aaron answered. As Aaron said to Moshe Rabbeinu in verse 24, I took it off, I gave it to me, I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Which from there, it could sound like that the calf itself came without Aaron trying to do it. And from there, it seems that, God forbid, it could have some type of independent power. So therefore, a person should always be careful what they say. Now, bear in mind, this is Ben Ish Chai points out, who's this conversation between? Aaron and Moshe.
Yeah.
Is Moshe going to make a mistake what Aaron means? No. Moshe is not going to make a mistake. Moshe will understand. But what this Bryce is telling is that even if you're having a conversation with a great person, speak in a way that can't be misinterpreted. It can't be changed what your meaning actually meant. Because even if the great person will make a mistake, but maybe other people will hear what you're saying, and they will make a mistake in what the meaning of the word is. Chaim Pfeffer adds on, the fact that Aaron made the calf, you could explain it away and say that he didn't really have a choice in the matter. He saw what happened to his nephew, Chur, how the Jewish people killed him because they didn't want to listen to him. Making avodah zarah, making an idol, it's not one of Yared Val Yaver. It's not one of the 3 cardinal sins where you have to give up your life for. You can't serve an idol, but making an idol, you're not allowed to do. But if you don't get killed for making an idol, you get malchus, you get a different punishment. And if it's pikuach nefesh, if it's life and death, then you're allowed to go ahead and make an idol if it's life and death, right? We do have the other famous story of Rashi. His father, he didn't want to sell his stone to an idol, and they said, if you don't sell the stone, we're going to throw you into the water. So he took out the stone to sell it to them, and he slipped. The stone fell into the water, and he lost his fortune, and he starts crying about his lost fortune. They let him go and said, in that marriage, you'll have a son named Rashi. You have a son who's like Rashi. So there's no, but that's going beyond the letter of the law. You don't have to give up your life not to make an idol, not to make an avodah zarah. And therefore, the fact that Aaron was there making it, you explain it to say that it was life and death. You saw what happened. They killed Hur, and Aaron didn't have a choice in the matter. They would kill him too. And he's trying to stall, waiting for Moshe Rabbeinu. But from the fact that he told Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayetze Egel Hazeh, and this came out, and this calf came out, that could sound like that it came out by itself. And that could have a problem that people can make a mistake. And even to a great person, when you speak, says you shouldn't speak. When you speak to someone who's very smart, you don't have to say the whole sentence. They can understand what you're trying to say. But still, the Gemara is telling us that it's worth it to say the entire sentence. You should be careful, even if it's not the usual way of talking. Where do we see that in the future generations? Those skeptics renounce their beliefs. Where do we see that? Marat Chayes asks. And he says, by Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat was a king of Yisrael. And he was very jealous of the power of the kings of Yehuda, how the Beis HaMikdash is in the portion of Yehuda, and Binyamin, and everyone's going to them, and basically nobody is looking to him as a supreme authority. So he made he went back to, he started communist Russia. You weren't allowed to leave his kingdom, and he made guards to make sure nobody could go to Yerushalayim. And people said, "You want to go to the Beis HaMikdash?" He said, "Fine, I'll build my own Beis HaMikdash." And he built a large temple, and he made golden calves over there, and everyone could come and serve these golden calves. And with time, it became the norm among the Jewish people. And where could such a mistake come from? This was similar to the golden calf that the Jewish people made in the desert. They didn't understand, they didn't learn the lesson from what happened in the desert with the golden calf. And perhaps you could say, why not? You saw the Jewish people were punished in the times of the Midbar for serving a golden calf. But the fact that they could interpret, Yeravam was a Talmid Chacham, was a tremendous Torah scholar, and he could explain, you see that Vayetze Egel Hazeh, and the calf came out, which seems that it has a spiritual type of life and power into it. And from there, that's where the mistake came out. And we're going to have very soon, Mitzvah Hashem, a little bit more about this whole idea about how do you refer and talk to avodah zarah, those who serve idols, about idols. Could you make fun of them? And that's going to be in tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Yeah, so I think we're going to pause over here. The next Gemara is going to speak about another surprising place where you don't translate, which is by Birchas Kohanim. You don't translate Birchas Kohanim, all the great blessings, and why?